Hello, Pennsylvania DOT. Welcome to Wisconsin, although you're not here, but we are, and we're going to talk to you through this video. My name is Steve Krebs. I'm the Chief Materials Engineer, and with me today is Kevin McMullen from the Wisconsin Concrete Pavement Association on my left, and then Deb Schwerman from the Wisconsin Asphalt Pavement Association on my right. And we're here today to give you a brief perspective on Wisconsin and its HMA and concrete pavement warranty program. So I'm going to start the program off today and talk a little bit about our history, what we've done, where we've been, and also some of the collaboration we've had with the industries as we've went forward with this program. And then we're going to ask the industry folks to add in their perspective of how we got to where some of the stuff in the beginning and where we're at today. And then I'm going to talk a little bit about lessons learned and where we're at today and where we see the future going forward with warranties here in Wisconsin. So with that said, I'm going to talk a little bit about the history. Wisconsin started its warranty program 20 years ago in 1994, and we started that journey or that program by sitting down with the industries and working through. We started with an HMA warranty and working through what that specification would look like, and brought the industry in. When we developed the concrete industry, when we developed the concrete specification, we did the same thing. Brought the industry in and sat down and talked with them. Another integral part of that whole discussion was the bonding industry. We had the bonding industry at the table at the time that we developed the specifications, so that we had their input into costing. Although they weren't able to talk specifically about pricing, they were able to give us some recommendations or some guidance on whether we were pricing ourselves out of what we would consider to be cost-effective warranted pavements. So with that said, we've built 233 HMA warranted pavements. Most of these pavements are complete reconstructs. There are some overlays, but a lot of them are full reconstructs. And we've also built 33 concrete pavements, and those were as well full depth concrete pavements or reconstructs. And so we've built quite a few since the first ones were built, and the first HMA ones were built in 1995. And so we have a fairly extensive history during that time period, and we've built a fair number of both concrete and asphalt pavements. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Kevin to talk a little bit about what he saw as important in the collaboration as we work together to develop the specifications, and also some of the work that we did once we were into the program and had projects out on the grade and bidding projects as well.
So you want to just talk concrete side?
Yes, if you would, please. I'll let Deb talk about the asphalt side.
All right. We began the development of the concrete paving warranty spec in 1996. That was the year that I left the department and came to the Wisconsin Concrete Pavement Association. Since I had been involved in the asphalt pavement warranty development back in 94, 95, they asked me when I came to the association to help lead the effort in developing the concrete paving spec. Our original approach was the same as at the time as the asphalt warranty spec, where we started off with a 5-year warranty, and we had the bonding industry in the room, as Steve indicated. And it was a very interesting discussion at that time, because there was a lot of folks in the department that felt that concrete pavements would require a longer warranty period than 5 years, and they were looking for 7 to 10. And when we began working with the bonding industry, they basically said, hey, you're going to measure risk. The longer you go out, the more risk you're going to have in this, and then the more cost that you will have in it. And then it got even more interesting discussion when we started talking about the different levels of distress that occur in a 5-year-old pavement, a 10-year-old pavement, and how you would set the cost of the bond accordingly. And I'll get into that just in a little bit. But as we got our first generation out the door, and it was at a 5-year warranty, and then there was some of the financial issues in the early 2000s that basically the bonding industry came to us at the time and said if you're talking longer than 5 years, that they weren't interested in being involved and would not issue any bonding periods past 5 years. I know they've done some different things since that time, in the early 2000s, but that's where we sit today is that. All right, so one of the things that surprises a lot of people is that our warranties are not a zero defect warranty. It was set with what is the average concrete pavement condition at 5 years, and we have the common distresses that are reviewed every year in the DOT's pavement management system, are all surveyed on the warranty sections, and they have a thresholds. For instance, the item of transverse cracking, it allowed two 24-foot long transverse cracks for every 528-foot segment going down the road. And that did surprise some people. And we set different values for that for every distress. And when it went out to the region offices for implementation, there was a lot of surprise that this wasn't a zero defect specification. But you had to start weighing the cost of, we had one crack here, one crack there, some things that the contractor may not have had control of during that first 5-year period. The heavy load, the truck fire on the slab, extreme de-icing conditions, chemical situations, whatever, that the contractor had no control of the minute that he pulled off the job, that to balance the risk that the contractor would have as well as balance the risk of the bonding industry, the zero defect just wasn't a reality. So, like I said, we have distress levels built in for all of those different things. Talk a little bit about the risk. The contractors must have felt that there was some risk into holding the bond and the warranty, because I think in general we saw between $1 to $2 a square yard more for the warranty projects than what we saw on standard concrete paving, all the same project size and type. We did see some reduced competition. Normally we had 4 or 5 bidders per project, and we saw a drop down to 2 or 3 in most cases. And I think what we saw is we have, obviously we have some bigger contractors and smaller contractors, but we had 3 or 4 contractors at the time that were big contractors, had some bonding capability, and they felt that they could handle 4 or 5 years of continual warranty projects without affecting their bonding capacity. But behind that, we had several small, more family-owned businesses that really weren't interested and were very concerned that if they started piling up several warranty projects year after year, that their ability to bid in the DOT environment might be diminished after 4 or 5 years. And they just didn't feel that was where their company was at. So that was one of the biggest concerns I saw amongst the contractors, was how much bond were they willing to carry and what were the long-term impacts of carrying bonds from year to year. And obviously, there was a price to that. If you're carrying several long-term bonds, they must have felt that risk was there, and then the price increase followed. While there were several, again in the contract, there were several distresses that we were monitoring year in and year out on these jobs. There was also several provisions within the specification that relieved them of different things. Like if the aggregate source they used was certified by the Wisconsin DOT as being one of high enough quality in terms of soundness and wear and freeze-thaw durability, that if all of a sudden a decracking project showed up, that they were relieved by that, then it wasn't part of the specification. They installed dowel bars according to standard in terms of size and location and orientation. If faulting showed up, they would be relieved of that type of thing. The one interesting part of the specification that we couldn't get through years and into the development of it was the concrete mix requirements. Part of the benefits of warranties and what they were touting was innovation by the contractor. But yet, one of the best places that we could innovate was in concrete mixes. And we had contractors that were thinking about optimized mixes and reducing cementitious contents and doing all types of things, but it actually in the end became a competition type of thing. They felt that if they strayed too far from the current DOT quote-unquote blue book mixes, which is the standard mix with 565 pounds of cement per cubic yard, that one particular contractor could have an economic advantage over another. So they really nailed down the general mix requirements such that innovation couldn't occur there, but they felt that we would keep the bidding table level for all people interested. So it was kind of a double-edged sword there, and we never really got through that issue in the time period that the department was working warranties. In terms of implementation within the department, I thought it was very interesting to watch, and that we had this big committee that had region representation as well as central office of industry and bonding, and that it was finished, and we went to implementation stage. We went out to the regions and said, give us projects, and we had projects coming in, and for the first couple of years it was a forced thing. They actually, at central office, they picked the projects and said, this is the one that it's going to be. But after a certain point, they tried to let it go and let the projects just happen. And that's when it got tougher and tougher to get warranty jobs. And I think it was a PR issue inside the region, and that a lot of folks, engineers at the region level, were looking at concrete pavements and saying, we wouldn't expect to have a distressed concrete pavement in 5 years. And this does allow for some distress to occur within the first 5 years. And there wasn't a whole lot of energy for it inside the regions just for that reason. And that's, I think, one of the reasons why the department kind of went away from warranties in the concrete pavement environment. We did have one project over those 33 where the contractor had to come in and do a mitigation. And it was a aggregate issue. They used I called it a mudstone at the time, and the stone actually just dissolved out of the concrete. And it was pretty ugly pavement. And we looked at it, and I guess the question was asked at the time, would the outcome have been any different if this pavement would have been warranted, in which it was, or if it was just a standard paving? And my consensus at the time in the industry was it wouldn't have been any different, that they probably would have caught this distress and this problem under the latent defects provisions of the standard specification, and the contractor would have been forced to do the same thing that he did. How did construction go? If you went out to construction jobs, and I was out on several of them over the years, there were some folks that said the projects went great because what was supposed to happen is that the concrete paving inspection requirements were supposed to be minimized, and those people were supposed to go away and let the contractor do his operations because he had the ultimate control and quality in the project. Some projects, we felt that did happen, and some of the contractors said they actually liked working under the warranty. But we had other projects where the DOT inspectors just couldn't let it go, and they continued to get caught in the middle of doing what they thought their role was, and traditionally, and what it was supposed to be under that, and it ended up being sources of conflict out in construction. Are we going to go into future later?
Yes. Yeah. I'm
okay.
gonna.
So I'll hold on to future.
Yes.
So I guess that's kind of a quick synopsis of where I saw the concrete paving industry go.
Great. Thank you, Kevin. Good points. I'm going to ask Deb from the Wisconsin Asphalt Pavement Association to say a few words about the development of warranties on the HMA side and the construction and some of the work that you were involved with.
Okay. I guess for me, I'd like to go a little bit back into the fundamentals of what the warranty program was really all about. And the intent was to get rid of all the method specifications and to actually just pull back from the department side and let the contractor you know, just like Kevin had said, we were trying to spawn some innovation of, you know, as a department, they cannot, you know, dictate to the contractor what they can and can't use as far as proprietary products, but we know that there's a lot of innovation, a lot of technology out there. So we were trying to promote, or the department was trying to promote the contractors to be able to use some of that technology in a real world type atmosphere. So that's kind of was the basics of the warranted program, at least how I see it when I got wrapped into it, and mine was a little bit later. I came in about 2001, 2002 in the warranty program. And on top of that, we were also trying to make sure that we could measure the risk and recognize the value that we could get for our projects by making them warranted. So the department set up and established criteria that would allow a project to even be eligible for the warranty program. And I think that from where I looked at viewing this and being able to speak to PennDOT and stuff today was more of, you know, we know that we had successes, we know we had some shortcomings and some shortfalls here in Wisconsin, and basically to tell you, in my opinion, from my perspective and my members, of what we think works. And I think if you go back to the fundamentals of where we started, I think that warranted pavements and warranted projects have some potential. I think, you know, right now we're kind of in a timeout in Wisconsin of where we're at. I think it's another tool we can pick up tomorrow and roll with, but we do need to make some changes, and I think we need to go back. We'll talk about the future in a little bit, but go back to where we started from. We wanted to promote some innovation and get the contractors out there trying some new stuff. We understand that comes with cost and it comes with risk, and at the time, you know, we could measure that risk as contractors because we knew how the pavement to stress surveys were going to be done. We kind of had some track records and some history with it, but as technology has increased, either we've just come so far, technology hasn't even caught up with us, that now it seems like the risk portion is something that we as contractors can no longer even measure or even wrap our hands around. So that left us either with these projects that would come out for bid and you'd either have too few bidders or economically it just wasn't feasible because we couldn't even build in the risk of what we were trying to undertake in our projects. You know, and now as we've progressed with technology, up until recent, we never had QMP, which is our quality management program. We never had base course specifications. So from the flexible pavement side of the house, we kind of always felt like we were at the mercy of everything that was underneath our structure. So for us to come in at the end of the game and have to warranty everything from the top down just got to seem a little bit excessive. So now that the QMP specification is rolling into place and we're building our pavements, you know, correctly, or is at least how we would like to improve on them, I think that warranties are definitely something that could probably come back on the table. A couple other things, I guess, to talk about would be that, you know, this has to be in equal value on all sides of the table. This is something that collectively the transportation industry needs to come together on. It's not just the HMA side of the house or the PC side of the house. I mean, it's got to be, you know, the earth movers and the aggregates and everyone in transportation. If we all come together for the common goal, you know, I think that we've had the advantage of working with the department and being able to sit down at the table and say, okay, we want to look at the end measure. You know, the department knows that they want, you know, 5 inches of new pavement with this PG binder grade, and we want to evaluate it with performance measures at the end. You know, I mean, I definitely think that warranties could have their time and place, but we definitely need to come back to the table, obviously, for that. Because the last thing I think we want to do is just drive up costs for the fear of the unknown. You know, that's just a lose situation for everybody at the table. So I think you just need to have clear expectations and you need to understand the value, and it seems like the expectation with warranted projects are to get something above and beyond what we already know. I mean, we know we're going to see distresses. We know that you're going to start to have issues. And we just need to make sure that our goal is to have realistic expectations and, you know, not expect the moon just because we decide to call it a warranted pavement. And I guess I'll pretty much stop there until you get to the future stuff, but.
All right,
Can I add one thing, Steve? You know, I think one Deb's points was really good, and it was a significant issue in the development of both of the specifications, and that a lot of times the big grading contractors were the prime contractor on these projects.
Mm-hmm.
And the paving sub virtually had, you know, no call on what was happening in the grading and the preparation of the base and everything for paving. So that was a big concern in the development is with the sins of the grading or the impacts of grading, control the performance of the pavement under the warranty. And you know, since we couldn't answer all of those questions with certainties, you know, that was part of the risk and everything that was built into this. So,
all right, thank you, Deb, thank you, Kevin. I'm going to talk a little bit about the administration of the program, touch a little bit more on some of the points that were already brought up, and just go a little bit into where, you know, how we've gone through the 20 years, a little bit about admin, like I said. And one thing I want to point out, why is the chief materials engineer sitting here talking to you about warranted pavements? Here in Wisconsin, pavements falls within the materials part of the department, so it's not part of design as it resides in many DOTs. Our department, we have pavements and pavement design policy resides within the materials section of the department. So that's why I'm here today to talk about warranties, because pavement design and pavement type selection policies and procedures and warranties falls within the materials area of the Wisconsin Department of Transportation. So I'm not sure how it is in Pennsylvania, but I know it does vary. It's about 50-50. About half the states have pavement design falls in the design part of the department, and then about half of it falls in the construction or materials world. So anyway, that's a little bit about why you're listening to me today. They did talk about thresholds, an important point to make. We based, these warranties were based on thresholds of deterioration that we were able to determine from our pavement management system. So we looked at what pavement management was telling us as what distresses we would see at year 5. We did have some 7-year warranted pavements on the HMA. So we looked at what the average value was of, you know, transverse cracking at year 5, both on the concrete and on the HMA side. So we used our pavement management data to establish the thresholds. We also used our pavement management data to evaluate the performance of those pavements. This was truly a performance specification. We determined what the performance was going to be for the 11 key distress thresholds on both the concrete and the asphalt side. So we measured those with our pavement management system, and then we compared that back to what the specification said for those particular pavements. I do want to talk a little bit about that. While it seemed like the right thing to do, and we were all for it, when it comes down to really using that tool for contract administration, it was difficult at times to use the pavement management tool for contract administration. The pavement condition index or any other pavement indice that was developed to manage pavements on a network level was not developed to administer a construction contract. And we found that it was difficult at times to take that information and really go out and apply it to a particular segment or 100 feet or whatever the case might be, because at some point you really had to get out and look at that pavement and measure it, get out there with a tape measure and do it. You know, pavement management systems are developed to manage thousands and thousands of miles of a system on some percentage of the measurement, and not everybody's measuring 100%. So there were some challenges associated with that. I'll be honest. We had some work to get through and some hurdles to get through, because again, that tool is not made for contract administration. And I want to touch a little bit on both what Kevin and Deb had said, and that was innovation. One of the reasons we did this, embarked on this in the beginning, was the thought that if we got away from our means and method specifications, that we would allow the contractors to bring in some more innovation. Both folks talked about it as well, that we weren't going to be out there on the contract inspection side or on the construction inspection side monitoring everything that the contractor did during the paving process. So we let the innovation take off. We felt we were covered, and we were on the performance end of the specification. So we had less people out on those particular jobs, and we really did let the contractor have a fair amount of free reign or innovation on the paving side of the project. So, and we feel we did get a lot of innovation come in, because there were some things that we were able to open up and let the contractors do. And so I think that was, I think that's an important part to allow the contractor some flexibility, because our means and method specs, there is some limitations to that. It's hard to stay, for the department to stay up on all of the changes in both the HMA world and in the concrete world. You know, we are challenged with the number of positions we have and our ability to really stay up on cutting edge, just because things are changing at a much faster pace than what we've seen in the past. In the past, we used to be driving a lot of the innovation. That's changed. The industry's driving a lot of the innovation today, and we struggle to keep up at times, although I think that's not unique to us. I'm sure that's pretty common across many DOTs. So with that said, we did measure our performance for year. We did a 5-year, we did a 10-year, we did a 12-year, and each of those times we measured performance of the warranted payments against counterpart payments or equal payments built under our standard means and method specifications. And by and large, the performance was better on the warranted payments, and so we continued down. We felt we were, getting a good value for what we were paying. We did price comparisons and cost comparisons as well, and they were very cost competitive, in some cases less, in some cases a little bit more, but by and large they were costing us, comparatively speaking, about the same. And so we were seeing a lot of good success. We did start to have some challenges on some pavements, and we went to conflict resolution on 5 different projects, and we were seeing some early deterioration on some of our other pavements, and so we issued a moratorium. I issued a moratorium for warranted pavements starting in August of 2012, at which time we wanted to step back and reevaluate where we were going, what the specifications said, and also we want to bring some of our material specifications into the warranty. We think that we're going to get a better value if we bring at least some of our material specifications into the warranty. We're also looking at changing our specifications on both the HMA side and on the concrete side, so we're trying to do some major overhauls with respect to those specifications. And so we felt it was prudent for us to at least step back and look at what our standard specifications were saying and revise those. There's also some things on the horizon with respect to intelligent compaction, both on the base course and on the HMA surface. And we want to take a look at what intelligent compaction could do for us from an acceptance standpoint. We think there might be some benefits to being able to bring that specification into a warranty specification. We also want to look at performance from maybe different than what we're doing for pavement management. We haven't figured that out yet. We're still struggling through that as we speak. So we're trying to, as I said, we're trying to redo the specification, make some improvements to it or revise it and get it back out in use here in the future. But there are a lot of things that we're going through right now as far as spec updates and revisions that we felt it was prudent for us to step back for a while and revise those. And so that's kind of where we've been and where we see the future going for us. We expect to be using them sometime in the future. Again, we'll have to develop a new spec, and we'll sit down with both the asphalt and concrete industries when we develop that specification and work through what that might say and what the wording would be. So, Deb, I'll let you talk a little bit about where you see the future on HRA payments.
Yeah, I don't know, I think that I kind of set the groundwork of where I think it's still a tool. I think it's a usable tool and something we can pick back up with and run with. I think you need to set very clear criteria of what projects you would even select for warranties, and I think you need to stick to that and be very clear about what that would be. If it's part of the program where you're just trying to buy some more time, and you know, we call them Band-Aid projects, to just kind of extend time until you get to a reconstruct, that is something that I wouldn't put anywhere near this warranted program. I don't think that you'll get the bang for the buck, so to speak, as far as where you're going to put your dollars, because the risk for a project like that is just going to strongly outweigh the rewards of it. A couple other things that I did like about the warranty program, and I think something that we were very good at when we met at the table, was to just kind of make the specifications transparent, that it wasn't so much of a hands-off, anything goes, that, you know, we still told the contractor, yeah, you have to have mixed designs. You know, this is ultimately, you know, the department wants, you know, this project at the end of the day, and they would set, you know, we'd still have a full plan, and you'd still, you know, get to see where, you know, everything would lay out. But at the end of the day, the contractor could determine whether it was 1 lift, 2 lift, 3 lifts. You know, the department would tell you what ESOL level, and then you could determine what mixes you wanted to put in. They would specify the PG grades, but then, you know, you could build on it from there. And for the industry, like we said, it did allow for some innovation, but we also had to be forthcoming with the department to still submit mixed designs. We still went through the regular process of, this is the mixed design, this is what we're going to use. And it didn't necessarily have to meet our current WSDOT specifications, but it did have to. We still had to set criteria, we still had to adhere to that criteria. Also, as industry, we had to submit and develop a QMP plan. It wasn't that just, oh, you just go out there and do whatever you want to. No, you tell us, you know, you tell the department what you're going to do. So you still set up testing requirements and frequencies that, even though from the department side it was hands off, you know, it went from more of like inspection to monitoring, of more of just kind of, you know, I think as industry, we still want you out there every day. We still want to have some buy-in and still some collaboration together, but didn't want you to be prescriptive and be very, you know, methodology specification related. We wanted you to kind of take a hands-off approach, but obviously it still needs to be a partnership, and there still needs to be some give and take. And I think that was something that we did very well in the warranty program. The other thing I would also say, though, is uniformity across the state is key. And as far as the interpretation of the specification and the training that would even be required, because it is something very different than what we're used to. And you know, we're fortunate to have the experience that we've had for so many years at the DOT of having our inspectors who have 20 plus years of experience. Well, to all of a sudden tell them, hands off, it doesn't matter truck temperatures, it doesn't matter quantities, yields, doesn't matter, stay away from it. They don't know how to deal with that, and it's a totally different can of worms. So there is some training that needs to go with that, and just some level of understanding, but uniformity, I think, is key, because like Kevin alluded to, you did wind up getting specific regions or districts, however your offices are broken up, that viewed the program differently. You'd have some that were in favor, some that thought that it was the worst thing you could ever imagine. So I do think that you need to be consistent, definitely statewide. Bonding, we really touched on the issues. We got pretty creative, I think, in the bond industry world, as far as, you know, whether we do a 2-year and renew, but they were pretty matter of fact to say we will not go over 7. 7 was the top for us. We did quite a few at 7 years, but we never went beyond that, and I think the bonding industry was probably the reason why. You know, we had the same struggles, just as you alluded to. If you get some smaller contractors that didn't have the ability to bond, or if so, it could only be for the period of the 5 years before they could even bid on another job, and that definitely does have its limitations. Of course, I think times were a little bit different back in the early 2000s than maybe where they are today, but yeah, I don't think that was much of a hindrance, and again, I think the future is whatever we decide it to be. If this is another tool and we see it going down the line, then I think we're just gonna pick it back up and go to the drawing board and see what we can do in the next few years, so, yeah, I think that's my take on it.
Great, thank you. The one before, Kevin, Deb, you brought up a good point about bonding. I just want to touch on that. It's one of the notes I had I didn't get to. When we originally established the bonding requirement on both pavements, it was a calculation of 1 3/4 HMA overlay on the entire project. And so that was the bond amount was established on a calculated amount of HMA at a given price using an estimate of what that would cost. And then we established the bond value in the bidding documents for the warranty bond. After a number of years, we took a look at that and we reduced that down to 25% of that value. We still use that same calculation, but we reduced the value down from 100% to 25% to alleviate some of the concerns that were being expressed by both industries about the contractors having to carry a considerable amount of bonding for these 5 years. And it was starting to add up that some weren't able to necessarily secure the required bonding, or they just were over their threshold of what they could carry. And so as a response to industry concerns, and also we felt we were covered with 25%, because by the time we had gone to that, we had not experienced anything that was catastrophic, and we were pretty confident that we would be okay at 25%. So that's just a little history of how we did change things, and we did. Another thing that I was going to talk about is we did see a significant number of changes in both specifications during their lifetime. We came back to the drawing board on a regular basis and talked about what was working, what wasn't working, what would be better, from a specification standpoint, from a performance standpoint, from a contract administration standpoint. And so, the spec on both sides was very dynamic and very interactive, and so it was not we wrote it once and walked away for 20 years. We were at the table on a regular basis talking about how things were going and what was happening. So,
Steve,
yeah.
just to clarify a question here on the bonding amount, was that just the value of the bond, or was that the automatic fix also?
No, that was just the value of the bond. That was not, there were predetermined fixes depending upon what the deterioration and the level of the deterioration. If we had thresholds that were established for minimal amounts of deterioration, and once you went over the threshold, then there was, it was pretty elaborate. The spec was very detailed in how much distress was, here's the threshold, and then what happens if you go over by a little bit, or if you go over by a lot, the fix was different. And then at what point was it a complete mill and relay or a complete overlay that we would come in and fix the entire pavement. And so it was just the value. All right, Kevin.
Future. Obviously, the Wisconsin DOT is our industry's biggest customer, so if they were to come back in and say, hey, we'd like to take a second crack at warranty, and it would be a priority to them, obviously we'd have to sit back down at the table and work with them to get that. But I think our industry would sit down and agree that we got a new specification that we work with. I think we got to look at a few key items in here. And the first is IRI. And I think the department has done a very good job with the IRI specification. As Steve and I have talked several times over the last couple of years, it appears to be right now our #1 driver of quality. For from the concrete industry side. We've improved on IRI every year since they've instituted the specification. But I think it's also forced our contractors to be a lot smarter in the mix design that they have in knowing how that mix is going to behave with the paver, get smooth pavements and quality durable concrete as well. Second part is, so incorporation of these new IRI provisions under this spec would be, I think, very important. Second part of it is we need to move forward. We're currently in the starting points of the operations of optimized gradations of aggregates, but before we move to a new warranty, we'd have to expand that to optimized concrete mix designs with our total focus on durability. And when we have those parts of the specification, standard specifications redone, I think we have a whole new outlook that we could take into how we would frame the warranty spec when it comes to what are the minimum requirements for concrete through that. The other part I think that we would need to factor in is we have 2 corridors now that have been under construction for a few years that they classified as high performance concrete pavement. And we've done a couple of things in that area that I think deserve a look as well. And that is particularly it's set the priority for aggregate use, where the contractor is really has to look at what he's doing and maybe have to look a little bit farther for aggregate if it's gotten rid of the marginal aggregates and forces them to look at the good aggregates. And the department has been willing to recognize that and perhaps take the extra cost to get that high quality aggregate in there. I think the other thing we need to factor in here is we've done several performance related specifications projects with the department, and where we've taken the combined effects of ride, strength, thickness, and air and put them into the federal highway model that was created under this, and use that as the means to put some projects out there and drive quality as well. And I think our industry has enjoyed those projects because we get the extra benefit of the additional thickness that we put in and the additional strength that a lot of times we give you above and beyond what's required under our percent within limit strength spec. And when we get a good ride on those jobs, the incentives start coming forward to the contractor in a way that it's valuable for them to make those extra efforts to happen on those projects. So we need to find a balance between these performance-related specs and these warranty specs, and see where the future goes. And I think that's what our challenge is here in the next 5 years.
Great, thank you, both of you, for your insights. And I hope this has been of value. We appreciate the opportunity to talk to you. I wish I could have come out to Pennsylvania and participated in your conference or your symposium, and didn't have that opportunity. Travel's tough here for us. I'm sure it's similar out there, and so. But I think this was a great idea. I think this is, hopefully you find it helpful. We're more than happy to do this and let you know our experiences here in the department. I'd like to thank both Kevin and Deb for participating today as well. It's important that they were here because they were such an integral part of developing the specification and working with their contractor members as well, because there was a lot of skepticism on their members' part, and they helped alleviate some of that as we worked through these things. And so they were an integral part, as well as their contractor members. And this has it's been a great experience for us up to this time. Again, we do have a moratorium in place. We've stepped back. We want to rewrite our specification and see how some of the things that are going on as far as new technology, that we can bring that into the spec and push things in a better direction, and so that we get even better performance than what we're seeing today. So with that, I don't know if anybody, Kevin or Deb, if you have any, I think that's probably it. Thank you, and I'm always available. If somebody wants to send me an email or give me a call, I'm sure Deb and Kevin would be as well. So
Mark and John know how to get a hold of me.
Yeah, and so if there are any questions that you have about what we said today, or any clarification, you can let me know, or contact one of these folks as well. So with that, Thank you.